Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Red Wave USA. This is actually episode 20. We're very excited to have, or at least I'm very excited, right, to have filmed 20 episodes of Red Wave USA. That is just awesome. We're making a difference, right, at least in the small atmosphere that we do have, but I couldn't be more excited that we have made it through 20 episodes. We've talked about a vast variety of different political topics, right? We've had so many breaking news things that we've shared with each other. It's been awesome, and I love that I'm able to do this as a hobby, right? So I enjoy this. I'm going to try and keep doing this as frequent, as often as I can, right? But I know it may be a little weird. Typically, I put spaces in between my episodes, and there's a day or two, or often, as we just came back, there's a month, right? So something happened, though. In our last episode, we talked about Renee Good and that whole ICE thing and everything going on in Minnesota, right? And if you remember, at the end of that video, I said, there's a boiling point, tensions are rising, with this ICE stuff. People are becoming more agitated and they're being influenced more and more to go after ICE, to attack ICE, right? I said that before I left for the weekend. And now here we are on Monday, and we had another incident. Another person shot and killed by ICE, right? And that's the first headline you always read. Man, woman, shot, fatally shot and killed by ICE, right? But we're going to get into that today, and I'm sorry this is going to be more of a serious episode, and it's kind of sad. I wanted our 20th episode to be more of a celebration, right, that we made it 20 episodes, but, things aren't going to work out every time you want them to in the exact way, right? Things aren't going to work out just the way you plan every time. So instead, we get to talk about the somber topic of another person being gunned down by ICE, but is it a somber topic? I'll tell you exactly what the somber topic is in this video. So thank you again for joining me in Red Wave USA. My name is Ross Rods. We couldn't be more happy to have you join us again. And we're going to get right down into it. Going to be a little bit different of an episode. I did my research, about this whole situation, and I watched all these different angles. So it's going to be more off the cusp today. I'm a little angered, I guess you could say. But anyways, thank you again for joining us. My name is Ross Rotz. This is Red Wave USA. Monday, January 26th. Welcome back to Red Wave USA. So excited to be here. And as I said in the intro, I wanted to make our 20th episode, I wanted to do something cool, some sort of celebration. I wanted to decorate the background a little better. Something, something joyous, right? But no, we had this breaking news event that happened. The same kind of thing as Renee Good. I guess it's a little different, but we're going to get very deep into that. And as I said, it's going to be more of me and my take on this matter, right? On this new development. I didn't really plan out a script or everything like I usually do because I'm more or less annoyed and upset. I know there's a lot of people upset right now with this whole development. So anyways, let's get right into this. Saturday, I believe it was January 24th, there was another big anti-ICE protest, right? And this has been kind of they've been doing this all month, the past few months. They're calling ICE the Gestapo, and they're comparing it to Nazi Germany and things like that. And we'll dive into that as well. But Saturday, Alex Pretti was shot and killed by ICE. And that's the first, I said that in the intro, that's the first thing you see. Alex Pretti gunned down by 5 ICEmen as he was held down against his will and shot at point blank range. And that's what you see before you see the video, anything like that. That's the first headline every time. But if you look into it a little further, right, and you go and you watch the actual video and you look at everything, split second, you slow it down, whatever. You watch this video, how does it start? The liberals want to classify it how it starts. The man is just holding a phone and he is videotaping ICE, right? He's videoing them as they're trying to pursue a warrant. This is how it happens every single time. These liberal protesters are trying to stop ICE from doing their jobs. And let's keep in mind that they are there just to do a job, right? They're under the direction of the federal government. They're not doing this for themselves, okay? They're doing this under the direction of the federal government. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you want to take issue with them, right? Mind-blowing, right? But anyways, guy is filming. He's filming the interaction of ICE and the protesters, and everybody's blowing their whistles, honking their horns, whatever. Then the man proceeds with his phone, he proceeds to jog up to ICE, or almost kind of bull rush them in a sense, right? And he's moving closer and closer to them, and he's yelling and profanities, everything possible in the book, right? The typical liberal approach, right? Let's bull rush an armed federal agent, because that seems to be the smart idea. So he rushes this federal agent with his phone, sticking his phone camera in the face of the agent, saying whatever. Which, again, this guy is standing in the street, filming up against this ICE agent, not allowing the ICE agent to pursue his active warrant and trying to get this illegal that they are chasing after, right? He's up in his face, not allowing this ICE agent to move or do anything, which, again, I said the same thing about Renee Good. This is called obstruction, okay? It is against the law. You cannot do that. And I know, I looked at the comments and they say, oh, well, obstruction shouldn't be the penalty of death, right? That's not the moral premise here, okay? You're going up. Let's take this in a smaller, let's condense this a little bit, okay? Say you are on a traffic stop, right? The officer asks you to exit your vehicle. You comply, you do so. And then upon complying, you rush the police officer and you get up in his face and you are upset about a certain thing, but you're rushing this police officer. This is all where it all starts every time. These protesters make this move, and what it looks like from a police officer's perspective is that you're making this move of aggravation. You're making this aggressive move at this police officer. Upon this, like any routine stop, right? Let's switch back to the actual incident. Like any routine stop, if a police officer is approached in an aggressive manner, they are going to, detain that person, right? Exactly what Alex was doing here. He bull rushes this agent in an attempt to stop them from doing their job, which is obstruction. So at that point, the man will be detained, okay? So upon them detaining him, they get him on the ground to detain him for obstruction. When an officer, and it's hard to see in this video, but an officer sees that he has a sidearm with him. He has a pistol with a sight attachment on it, along with 2 full clips next to his pistol, okay? And he brings this pistol to a protest. And I'm not saying anything about his right to carry. He has the right to bear arms. That's completely fine. But when you are carrying a pistol, when you are, using your Second Amendment right and you have that pistol on your hip, oftentimes that means that the only reason you will ever use that is in self-defense against a criminal or someone attacking you, i.e. not a federal agent. So what happens as they're trying to detain him in this big scuffle, they're trying to get him down, they use the pepper spray, anything to de-escalate the situation and keep people out of danger. As they scuffle on the ground, which again, Pretti is still resisting arrest. He's already been detained for obstruction, still resisting arrest on the ground. He is fighting these federal agents, trying to get him off of him. And then he reaches. And I'm not going to show you the video because it is graphic and different people have different rights to different videos, but I am going to show you the photo of Pretti reaching at his sidearm, or what appears to be he is reaching, okay? Back to our little fake scenario of you being pulled over by a city officer, a state officer, whatever. Let's go back to that. Let's say you're back in the car now, right? Which, anytime I'm pulled over, both of my hands are on the wheel. Yes, sir. Yes, officer. You comply. Let's say that as the officer is standing at your window, you rapidly reach to the side of your belt. And that officer has no clue if you're armed or not, right? As that officer, what is your first instinct? He is trying to pull a weapon from his belt. Okay, that's my first instinct, right? So as this Pretti guy, he quickly, in a very quick manner, reaches for his side belt. In that situation, in my mind, he's reaching for a weapon, which, in fact, he did have a weapon on him. And you want to say he was disarmed before the matter or whatever. He's still reaching, okay? It's still a quick and, intent. There was intent behind the maneuver to reach for his belt, okay? And that's justification right there, for me, at least. And then after that, after he does the reaching, he is shot. So let's go into the matters of how this could be prevented, okay? Every post that I saw, Facebook, news, whatever, he was just filming. He was a nurse, he was a good man, and he was just filming. He's just filming ICE agents. Okay. You want to know how this is prevented? This is prevented by you staying on the sidewalk and letting ICE do their jobs. Not interfering with them, not obstructing them. If Alex Pretti was to stay on the sidewalk and film from a distance, sure, that's fine. But as soon as you bull rush these agents, as soon as you resist arrest, as soon as you reach for a sidearm on your belt, that is when you put yourself in danger. Okay? It's pretty simple to comply with a federal agent, police officer of any kind, state, city, whatever. It's pretty simple. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, officer. Even if you are armed, even if you do have a pistol on your side belt, this is it. Right here. Okay? And then you let the officers detain you without a struggle. And this would have never happened. But even before you get to the part of the detainment, it would have never happened had you stayed on the sidewalk and peacefully protested. The idea of protesting throughout these liberal protests has become violent. We talked about this back in the Charlie Kirk thing. We talked about this in earlier ICE protests. We talk about this all the time because these liberal protesters are being pushed to this level. And I know, if you are upset about this shooting, you think, if you are one of those people that thinks ICE is the Gestapo and the Republicans are the new Nazis, you want someone to be mad at, right? That's your whole thing. You want to put the blame on someone else but the aggressive protester. You want to put the blame somewhere, right? I'll tell you exactly where you can put the blame on. You can put partial blame on Alex Pretti for bull rushing an officer and reaching for the sidearm on his belt. But you can also put the blame on Governor Tim Walz. When Tim Walz gets up in these press conferences where all these ICE protesters in Minneapolis are watching, all these ICE protesters throughout Minnesota, what seems to be the aggressive ones, are watching, and you get on and you compare ICE to the Gestapo and you compare Republicans to Nazi Germany, when you get on and you say these things, it is going to make people revolt. It is going to make people become angry and aggressive. It is going to make these people have a sort of hostility instilled in them by Governor Tim Walz. This hostility is going to present itself against these ICE agents in the street. So if you want to blame somebody, You blame Governor Tim Walz. You blame him for construing this huge, right, anger and tension. You blame him. When he gets up there and he says, you know, we're going to see stories about this. This is the wrong side of history. I get these comments all the time too, but we're going to see stories about this. Some little girl is up in an attic, comparing to Anne Frank, is up in an attic writing about how these ICE agents are coming into homes and destroying America. When you compare something so drastic and you take this ugly, nasty thing that Nazi Germany was, and you compare that to America of today and Republican leadership and Trump and ICE, no wonder these people are going to follow you. Your supporters, these far left progressives, they are going to follow the call of your word. Obviously, we went and liberated Nazi Germany, right? We rid the world of that. The U.S. played a huge part in that deal. So obviously, when you compare those two things, these progressive liberals only think one thing. They think that they need to go stop it. An everyday citizen needs to stand up and revolt against the federal government. This is what some would call inciting an insurrection, okay? When you are making a stand against the federal government and you use force to do so. So anyways, now that we're past the Tim Walz stuff, if you want to put your blame on anybody, you put it on him. Now that we're past this, let's go back to the incident. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, right? I was just a kid. We had this dog. His name was Toby. He was a yellow lab with a little bit of pit bull in him, so he had a little aggressive nature at that. So my family, we would always let the dog out in the morning. You know, and it's early, it's before school, so it's still dark out in the morning. We would let the dog out, you know, to do his business, whatever. Our dog had a history of being this, you know, with the pit bull in him, he had a history of being a little bit of a brute, right? He wasn't scared of anything. So one morning we let him out. And previously he had gotten in fights with raccoons and other animals, but we let him out this morning. You know, we're sitting there watching him. We spot a skunk at the edge of the yard, right? What does our fearless dog go and do? He approaches that skunk. He gets closer, ever so closer to this skunk. And we all know what skunks do. But he was getting warning signs. The skunk, you know, started to turn around. What does the dog do? The dog growls and gets closer, emanating an attack. The dog starts to bark and creep closer and closer. And what does the skunk do? The skunk sprays the dog. Now, I know that humans have a lot more mental capabilities than that of a dog. But here we are again in this same sort of scenario. The man has his phone. He starts on the sidewalk. Then he comes into the middle of the road, blocking ICE vehicles. And then he gets closer, yelling, and obscenities, and, you know, language, whatever. And he gets closer and closer until there's a physical altercation. And things just heat up from there. It's a common sense deal. As I said towards the beginning of this video, the only thing that you had to do was stay on the sidewalk and film from there. Peacefully protest. It is not hard. But again, your liberal executives have pushed you to this belief that aggressive protesting is what's going to change America. That is not what is going to change America. Okay? So please, I know that I get liberal viewers on my videos, and I'm sure some of you are attending these anti-ICE rallies. When they become violent, or they start to ramp up and the pressure boils and, you know, everybody's getting angry and the mob starts to move in closer and closer to these ICE agents, please peacefully protest. That's all we ask. Keep your distance. Film all you want. Say all you want. You have the First Amendment. You have the right to protest. That is completely fine. But when you start bull rushing these agents and you get in their face and you put hands on them, that is when things go south. And that is common sense. When you have an officer that is checking speed in his car on the side of the highway, do you pull off on that highway? Do you get out of your vehicle, go up to that officer's window and start banging on it? When that officer steps out, do you rough him up? Is that normal? No, it's not. You comply for the safety of yourself and for the safety of that officer. You comply with orders, okay? These officers are trained to spot out situations of danger. You are not. You are not trained to spot issues of danger or areas of danger. So when you're going and roughing up an ICE agent or a police officer, you don't know that. So don't do it in the first place. It's pretty simple. And I'm sorry I've got so heated about this, but just the amount of pushback that I've seen from the left on this has just absolutely, enraged me. That I needed to, I know we just filmed an episode on Friday, I needed to get back and talk about this, let off some steam. That's what this is. It's a political talk show. We talk politics. We talk about the right side of politics. Obviously, I am a registered Republican. We talk about the Republican side of politics. But this isn't a Republican-Democrat thing. This is a common sense thing. You should have the common sense as an American citizen not to bull rush a federal agent, not to bull rush an officer. That should have been taught to you in elementary school. So when you go and rough up an agent, you assault an agent, rather, and then you continue to resist arrest, and then you give the agent signs that you are going to inflict harm upon them, they are going to defend themselves. That's typically what happens. So if you are not ready for that, don't pursue it. It's as simple as that. So I really hope that this is kind of a turning point, that this is something that these liberal protesters can look at and be like, okay, we have taken this too far. We have brought the fight to the ICE agents rather than elected officials. We have brought this rage and aggression upon people that are doing their jobs. Okay? And let's also keep in mind that 75 million Americans voted for ICE to carry out the things that they are doing, to deport illegal aliens, oftentimes illegal criminal aliens. Okay? Let's keep that in mind. I know you're angry. But again, you are in the minority of angry people. Let's keep in mind that the Democrats and their way of doing things, letting millions upon millions of illegal immigrants into this country, 70% of them, according to DHS, violent illegal immigrants. Let's keep in mind that the majority of America voted to clean up our country and keep it safe. Let's also keep in mind that these ICE agents work for you. They work for the liberal Americans. They work for the conservative Americans. They work for both of us, okay? And they are doing their job to keep you safe. I can pull out a very long list of people that have been tragically killed, raped, murdered, assaulted, kidnapped, human trafficked. We can talk all about that if that's what you want to do. If you need a reminder as to why ICE is in the cities and pursuing active illegal immigration warrants, I can show you a full-on list of people that have lost their lives, that have been affected by this illegal immigration crisis. We can go on and on if that's what you'd like. And I'll be glad to do that next episode if I get that from the TikToks and the comments, I'll be glad to do that. We'll go name by name. We'll start with one right now. We'll start Laken Riley. Lost her life to an illegal immigrant. Okay? Irina Zaruski, tragically killed stabbed in the neck on a subway. We'll go on and on about every single person, every American citizen that has been killed by someone that is here illegally. If you need that reminder, because it can happen to you too. You want to stick up for these illegal immigrants and you want to stick up for these people, they don't give a crap about you. They don't. They really don't. Do you see all these illegal immigrants out there protesting with you? No, they're not. One, because they know better, and two, because they're here illegally, and they actively know in their mind that what they're doing is wrong, that they are breaking the law. Okay? That's what I'm saying. I get on here and I feel like I reiterate myself because this stuff is common sense. There's nothing else to it. It's something that you should know in the back of your mind. It's good versus bad. You know this. Okay? You know to follow the law of an orderly society, because what happens when you don't have laws in an orderly society? Chaos. Exactly what we're seeing in Minneapolis right now. I just saw last night, they're outside and pushing into the hotel that these ICE agents are staying at. What do you think's going to happen? So as these protesters, as they break down the door, this poor hotel owner, they smash the sign of the hotel, they smash the glass, they're trying to break into the hotel where these ICE agents are sleeping. What happens when you get into, say you make it all the way into the floor that the ICE agents are sleeping on, and somehow you make it through the locked door, you make it into these ICE agents' hotel rooms. What happens then? What are you going to do? What's your plan? You've already shown that you are being aggressive. You've already shown that you're breaking the law. Okay? You already shown breaking and entering into a private residence. Because yes, when you buy a hotel room, that is your private residence for the night. You've already shown all this aggression. Do you want to be arrested? Is that what you're looking to do? I don't get the logic behind it. I haven't fully wrapped my mind around it because, frankly, I don't think I need to. Because it is, again, a common sense thing. That's all it is. So anyways, I'm sorry to make our 20th episode so stern. I wanted it to be a celebration. I wanted to thank all of you for the viewership and the positive comments, but this is what our 20th episode has turned into. And if the liberal protesters, the progressive protesters continue what they're doing and continue this path, I guess our show is going to turn into a very dark one. Because I'm just going to have to keep getting up here and reiterating myself and explaining these actions. Because the only thing that these liberals see is someone getting shot. They don't look into why. They don't look into where he quickly reaches for the gun on his belt. And if you want to argue that the other agent, a second before he was shot, took the gun off the guy's belt, the guy was still reaching for it. He didn't know that the gun was gone. His intent was still to shoot federal agents. So anyways, that's going to do it for me. Again, I'm sorry for getting up here and with such a hostile tone. But it's annoying that these men and women that are risking their lives, obviously this shooting showed us that they are risking their lives. Obviously the Renee Good incident showed that they are risking their lives. They had the chance of being run over. These protesters are using all kinds of different weapons. And now this Alex Pretti guy had a gun on his hip with 2 loaded mags that he brought to a protest with who knows what intent. Actually, towards the end of his life, we know what that intent was. That intent was to shoot ICE agents, to shoot federal agents. Thank you so much for allowing me to do 20 episodes, and thank you for listening to me. I know that's not, you don't have to do that, you know what I mean? But the likes, the comments, everything, I appreciate all of it so much because it gives me the pride to come up here and do this, and the confidence rather as well, to come up here and talk about politics with you all. So thank you so much for tuning in to Red Wave USA. Happy Monday. Have a great week, and good night.